Super excited to be here with everyone today, and I really want to thank all of the presenters and all of the speakers who are here today who made this event possible. And I really want to thank our student senators who are so dedicated to finding ways to engage their fellow students civically and make sure that they have important information accessible to them. So really quickly, I'm going to go through a really basic rundown of our agenda for the day. So we're going to have two segments, brief addresses from two of our senators, Josh Dudon and Sage Fukai-McCullough, who will start off the day. After that, we'll have 20-minute keynote speakers. The first keynote speaker will be Dr. Amy Kramer, who is an economics instructor here at Pima. And the second speaker will be Eric Safir, who is a political science instructor as well, or at Pima. After that, we're going to have really brief presentations from three different organizations that support civic engagement and voting. And after that, we will have a Q&A at the end for any questions that may come up. So some basic sort of like groundskeeping. If you have a question that you would like to submit for the Q&A via the chat, please submit it only via text and include your name as well as the question and if that question is addressed to anyone specifically. That way we can be sure when we're in that section that we're asking the questions to the correct people. I also wanted to mention that we have closed caption capacity. So if anyone would like to use closed captioning, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be a button that says closed caption with a little arrow that points up. If you select that arrow, you'll be able to have closed captioning, and we're super thankful to James, who's here today, who's going to be live typing that for us today. And I think that was all that I had to mention. With that, we'll go ahead and transition over to Josh Dudon, who will do our first student address.
Thank you, Bea. I appreciate it. Again, welcome everybody. I just saw in the chat, I guess we're competing against the Biden town hall. So for everybody here and participating, we really appreciate you coming here. You know, voting is a really important part of our civic duty. Research has shown that higher instances of voting are one of the unforeseen benefits of attending college. So we're really happy to do what we can to facilitate that and make sure that people are empowered to vote, but they're also educated on the issues and that they know how to vote for the people that are going to push for the policies that they want. In Arizona, you know, I know for anybody who remembered in the last national election and presidential election, there was a lot of stories of voter suppression and instances of polls being very far away from each district or having very inconvenient hours or not enough polling or regardless of the issue. Voting is the most important thing to change things like that. So the more that you can get educated on the issues, the more you cast your ballot, the more you band together with the people that are, you know, like-minded and want the same policies as you, the more you can get change done and not just leave it up to the lobbyists, but actually take control of your own civic duty. So I really appreciate you guys being here. I want to introduce Sage Fukai-McCullough. Sage is our student senator for Pima West Campus. He's also our governing board representative. Sage.
Thank you, Josh. And I just want to say welcome to everyone. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. The last election was the first election that I was able to vote. I was 18. While I was able to vote, there were so many reasons that piled upon one another. And I just decided, you know, I just won't do it. And not that it was, it wasn't like a direct, I didn't want to vote, but there were so many things I wasn't sure of. How do I vote? Where do I go to? Because there's so many different little things. How do I even register to vote? And then finally, will it even matter if I cast my vote in this election? And then all those things combined, I didn't do it. And, you know, ironically, I am a political science major. And the more I learn about our government and our election processes, I love it. And I just really, you know, the purpose of this day is to share with all of you this information. And then now I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Amy Kramer, the economics instructor.
Hi, thank you so much. I am going to share my screen with you. And here we go. It's true that I am a economics instructor here at Pima. And in fact, when I got my job here in 2002, I thought that I won the lottery. And I have to tell you, it's 2020, and I still think every single day, I cannot believe that I get to work at Pima, and I get to work with amazing students like who we're just hearing from. And in addition to that, I'm developed a program. I'm the founder and president of a program called Voices on the Economy. And it sounds like, and the acronym of course is VOTE, so it sounds like it might be voter registration, but it isn't. And it sounds like it might be voter information, but it isn't. It's actually voter education. And what we do, because so much of what we vote on are economic issues, that what I'd like you to start with right now is just to get a baseline of what you think about the things that we really fight about in our society. So if you looked at this a voting ballot and you just ignored everything on the second vote, so just like clean slate, where are you today? And I'd ask you to vote on agriculture and product safety and livelihood and housing, income distribution, the environment, healthcare, market power, retirement security, the federal budget, international trade, economic stability, immigration, all the things that are so hugely important for our well-being. And if I asked you, okay, listen, without any other information, would you consider yourself a conservative, a liberal, or a radical on these issues? And then I asked you to put, a little mark where you are. Let's say that you're conservative, and I said, hey, just put a mark where you are, or that you were between conservative and liberal. Okay, put a mark along that outside circle, just to get a baseline of where you are. I would then say, and I think we have some very, very well-educated people here on what the issues are and on what the perspectives of those issues are, but I still challenge you with how well do you really know your own perspective, that is what you're identifying as your own perspective, and how well do you know the alternative perspectives? Because it's my great belief that, I'm sorry, I just gotta, hold on, just gotta hide that panel so that I can see. It's my belief that we can really impact the world in the following way. Here's my vision for the VOTE program. It's a world, so imagine this, I just want you to close your eyes and imagine this, a world where people are freed from material worry, so that each of us could contribute our unique gifts and society could actually reach its highest potential. Imagine that world where people are freed from material worry. That is to say that when people are waking up every day, they're not just thinking, how am I gonna put food on the table? How am I gonna keep a roof over my head? What do I need to make that happen? But they actually have freedom from that. And they actually can do what it is that they're most gifted and passionate about doing in the world. That's my vision. And I gotta tell you that I share that vision, that the VOTE program shares that vision with conservatives and shares that vision with liberals and shares that vision with radicals. But unfortunately, we spend all our time fighting with incredible negative hostility. So much so that large percentages of our population believe we'd actually be better off if some of the alternative perspectives, the people who are advocating for alternative perspectives weren't here. Every single perspective. And what makes it a great perspective and what makes it come from the great economic thinkers is that it's engaged in saying, How do we create material well-being? How do we create that basis? I'm not talking about materialism where possessions are the most important thing, but material well-being. What is it that gives us the kind of prosperity so that our basic needs are met and we're free to pursue our passions and our gifts? What is it that makes this little girl have glasses, and me, and I have glasses? What is it that gives us these glasses so that we can function in the world, and yet 1 billion people across the world don't have glasses? When it's something, it's not like coronavirus, it's something we actually know how to fix. And it's been estimated that we could actually get those 1 billion glasses out to people for 50 cents a pair of glasses. So it's something that is inexpensive and something we know how to fix, and yet it's not fixed. It's not even fixed in the United States. And think of the consequences of people not having glasses. And that's the smallest little example of people not having roofs over their head or being able to feed their children. And so what we want to do is we want to recognize what's in our way, because if we can just remove what's in our way, we actually could achieve this. And what's in our way is that partisan hostility, right, and siloed thinking are doing the very opposite that we need. So we were sent these great economic thinkers, Adam Smith, who brings us the conservative perspective, Karl Marx bringing us the radical perspective, John Maynard Keynes bringing us the liberal perspective. Over the centuries, we've been sent these incredible gifts. But instead of using them, as all great science should do, to be a launching pad to brand new ideas, instead what we've done is that we just fight with each other and vilify each other and get more and more engaged in our little silos so that we can't generate any new ideas. Therefore, even their ideas about how to create prosperity get blocked. And I believe that we can remove ourselves from this. So I want to do a little experiment with you, and just to get a sense of, to make sure that you have a sense of what it is that each perspective is saying we could use to generate the kind of prosperity that we envision. All right, now let's say that there are 3 different countries. I'm going to take this one at a time, all right? So there's these 3 different countries. Country A, where there's private ownership of businesses. Okay, the country B, again, private ownership of businesses, and then country C, cooperative ownership of businesses. Now let's say that, we'll just take it one at a time. Okay, so let's start with country A. So in country A, you have, let's just say you have a business and it's engaged in providing a service, let's just say. Okay, the service is to balance that we as owners of this business, would balance a book on our head. I don't have a book right here. I didn't bring one right here, but you balance a book on your head. So try to do this at your own home or wherever you are. You balance a book on your head, and this is the service you're providing. You're going to provide an entertainment service. So you balance this book on your head, and you do the hokey pokey, and you turn yourselves around, and you put your left foot in, and you put your left foot out, and then we get left with somebody. Let me just pick any random person here, if that's okay. Michael, can I pick you? Michael Lopez? I'm just randomly picking you. Are you here or not? Julia.
I am here. I am here. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, let's just say that at the end of that, the business, at the end of the day, you have this company and you own it privately and you win. Congratulations, Michael. And for winning, guess what? You're going to get this big, huge pile of money, Michael, and you get to keep it all. Right? So that's kind of exciting, right? You get this big pile of money. You worked hard. You stayed up nights. You went to extra schooling. You really know how to balance a book on your head, Michael. And
how soon can I get to that country?
Okay, now, here's the thing. You get to keep all that money, Michael. And by getting to keep it, you start new businesses. right? So you
Okay.
kind of spin off and you start new businesses. And as you start new businesses, Michael, you hire people to work for you. And as you hire them to work for you, they get money. And when they get money, they go spend money. And when they spend money, more businesses develop. And before you know it, you have a thriving, prosperous economy. And along the way, there are churches and families and corporations who are all giving to, you know, the greater good of society, including helping those who might fall through the cracks. That's a prosperous society. Okay, I want to keep that in mind. Michael, you got that one?
Yes, yes, I do.
Good. And you want to move there? Okay, that's good. Okay, now let's go to country B. Still, again, we're going to have private ownership of businesses. Only in this case. Oh, no, not only in this case, like in this case, we're also going to have a special, you know, set of businesses that are meant for entertaining people. And this entertainment business is balancing a book on your head and doing the hokey pokey and, you know, getting paid for that business. Okay, so we balance the book on our head. We all do the hokey pokey. We turn ourselves around. We put our left foot in. We put our right foot in. Boom, and then who wins this one? Let's say Guadalupe wins this one. Is that okay with you, Guadalupe? Guadalupe. No?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay, so Guadalupe, so you win, congratulations. You did such a great job, Guadalupe. You did a fantastic job. I'm so proud of you. You worked so hard. And now, Guadalupe, I'm going to tell you that you get this big pile of money, okay? But once you get that big pile of money, did you notice that nobody else around you has any money? So are you really going to start any business, Guadalupe, if you don't think anybody can buy, you know, any of your products, your goods, or your services? And I think the answer is going to be no.
Yeah,
So
probably
you
no.
partner with government. And when you partner with government's going to take a portion of that money, okay? They're going to take a portion of that money, they're going to redistribute to other people there. And as they redistribute to other people, people start spending that money, which generates businesses. In the meantime, the government's setting up programs to make sure that people don't fall through the cracks. And before you know it, that demand that was generated by the redistribution creates more businesses, which creates more businesses. And before you know it, Guadalupe, you have a thriving, you know, prosperous economy where everybody is assured their material well-being.
Awesome.
You got that one?
I did. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Okay, now there's this third system, and now in this case, the company is not owned privately. It's owned by the people who actually work there. Okay, but they still provide the same service, right? The goods and services are goods and services, and they provide this service where, you know, people balance a book on their head and they do the hokey pokey, and whoever wins, you know, wins. All right, so we're gonna balance a book on our head, do the hokey pokey, turn ourselves around, and in this country, let's see who's gonna win this one. Oh, let's see, we have Yuri, who's gonna win this one. Yuri, you won. That's fantastic. How are you doing, Yuri?
I'm great.
Okay, so am I saying your name correctly?
Yuri.
Yes? Am I saying your name correctly?
It's pronounced Yuri.
Yuri, okay, thank you. Yuri. So Yuri, you did a great job, okay? You're so successful at this. And guess what? Instead of getting that huge big pile of money yourself, you do get it for your company, right? And you share it with everyone in the company. Now the company might do you know, they might decide, hey, you know, Yuri, hope I said that right. You know, you get a special bonus, but otherwise, like, we all contributed to this. I did the marketing, I did the setup, I did you right? And you were the one that won. And the last, you had that book balanced on your head. But everybody recognizes that everybody brought in some of that success, so that everybody should get some of the reward for that, even if you do get a bonus, because that's you know, democratically you know, decided in the firm. And now what happens is that people in the society come together, and there's still a government organization that comes in and says, wait a minute, I got an idea, you guys. You know, instead of all of you individually using that money to buy your healthcare and buy your transportation and buy your higher ed. How about if we just, each of you would get taxed, a bit, and that money would go into providing healthcare for everyone, and a decent transportation system for everyone, and higher ed for everyone. How about if we do that? And Yuri says, you think that's a good idea?
Yep.
Say it's a good idea. Okay, great. So you say, this is a great idea. We're going to do that. So now, but we still have a bunch of money, right? So we're outspending and we're generating new businesses that are also cooperatively owned. And before you know it, we have a thriving society where not only are all the basic needs guaranteed, but we also have more income equality and a thriving, prosperous economy. And that's what I want to introduce to you, is these 3 ways of thinking about how to create prosperity. And what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to share with you a polling question, and I'd like you to answer this question, which is, which one in which country do you prefer to live? Which one do you prefer to live in? Still waiting for about 6 people.
Are we putting it in the chat?
No, you're putting it,
Oh.
there's a poll question there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there should have been a poll that pulled up as a pop-up.
Mm-hmm. And we'll just wait about
didn't get
10 more seconds. We're still missing 5 people, so you should be doing that right now.
Sorry, Amy, my poll didn't work for me.
Okay, all right.
I got
So
it.
I think the hosts and co-hosts are having a little bit of a trouble, but you can just, if you can try, like I was able to vote, I just clicked on the country that I wanted.
Okay. All right. Well, let's. I'm sorry. I've lost my ability to do this. My mouse is not working.
Can you both stop it, please?
Okay. My mouse is currently not working, unfortunately. So I am going to. Can you get that? Can you, Bea, do you have an ability to cancel out this? I've got this mouse problem going on here. Do you see that on your screen, or is it just on mine? Bea, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I just went ahead and closed the poll window. Did you need anything else?
No, but my mouse is not working right now, unfortunately.
Okay.
So let me try to figure out something. So hold on one second.
You can try to use
keep my money during all this?
Yes, Michael, absolutely. If I can get my mouse working, I will be in really good shape here.
You
I
can
think
try
I'm in the
to
wrong business too.
Let me just see. I think I'm going to try to switch my screen here, and
there you go. It seems to be moving now.
I got it. Yeah.
Cool.
And let me go back to the poll, and I'm going to share the results with you. And this is what I want you to see. I want you to see that we cannot agree in this little tiny meeting that we have of 20 people. We can't agree on what this is. How do we expect, and these are great ideas and legitimate ideas about how to create prosperity. How do we expect to solve this problem when even in our little group at Pima Community College, that we can't do that? Because this is what we fight about. This is what we fight about. The Revolutionary War, no taxation without representation. The Civil War, slavery. World War I, imperialism. World War II, fascism, Then capitalism versus communism, the Korean War, Vietnam War. It's all a fight about resources and how we're using those resources and how we create prosperity. And you can see that that's the basis of what we fight about and what we're voting about. That the conservatives, that is country A, are embracing what's called free market capitalism. Capitalism, private ownership of land, labor, and capital, but please leave government out, leave it alone. Or liberals, and you of course hear that in the Republican Party, and liberals who are embracing fair market capitalism, saying, hey, wait a minute, absolutely, capitalism, it's going to create the most possible wealth, the most possible innovations, the most possible goods and services, but we want it to be fair. We want to have stability, equity, accountability. And the radicals who are like, no, it's capitalism itself that's causing the problem. We need to switch it and have democratic socialism. And of course, that's what we recognize. Now we're just doing kind of in the vote program, just like really bright line changes between these, just to help people to get a voice in what the debate is and what the conversation is. And it's coming from these three great economic thinkers who are echoed in today's arguments. But instead of hearing them and instead of falling in love with how do we create prosperity, instead what we do is we just shout each other down and shut each other up and vilify each other. And then we're stuck as a nation. See, I think that what we should do, I think that in the mission of the vote program is this. The mission is to inspire new solutions, is to use those ideas as a launching pad, inspire new solutions to our nation's urgent economic problems by building a culture of respectful listening, passionate advocacy, and intelligent debate. And that's why I say to you that the vote program is a voter education program. It's not voter registration. It's not voter information. Which candidate is going for, the single payer versus Obamacare and healthcare. No, this is what are the different perspectives. And what we ask people to do is to actually, we teach people from all walks of life to hear those voices of the great economic thinkers of the past that are echoed in today's arguments. And then what we do is we line up the conservative, liberal, radical perspectives side by side in a completely unbiased way. And then we invite people to try on the voices through role plays and other activities. The participants become fluent in each point of view. That combative debate becomes solution-focused conversation, and that we set that foundation to use that as a launching pad. And that's what it is. All our great genius people who are going into, who are not having their material well-being met, are going into things that they might not love. They're going into, how do I make money here? Well, if we had a way to ensure prosperity for all, we'd free people to contribute their best and have society go. And that's why I'm inviting you to check out the first volume of our textbook, which is now being used in over 89 countries, and every state in the United States is using this idea. And what we're trying to do is to get people, especially young people, to fall in love with the idea that we haven't solved these problems. We haven't solved the problems of prosperity. And if we can use those ideas as a launching pad, listen, it could be one of you who actually solves the problems. And it's also a class, if you ever want to take a class here with me, it's Econ 150. We have everything we need to change the conversation. We have everything we need to get involved. And that means voting. And I mean, obviously, I feel as strongly about voting as what all of you articulated to start. But what I want to say is what we want is educated voters. We want people to know what their interests are and what the stakes are. And we want people to have a Sputnik moment, that moment where we fell in love with trying to get to space. How about we fall in love with trying to solve the problems of economic prosperity? And how about, instead of pretending when people are out in the world or in classes that it's already been solved, how about we say, there are great ideas, but we need some new minds on this. We haven't created a new idea in 100 years.
Thank you, Dr. Kramer.
Thank you so much. And that's me. That's my phone number.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that information. Check out Econ 150. I think I might check out Econ 150. That sounds really interesting. Thank you for coming to our event, and we will go ahead and transition over to Mr. Safir from the Poli-Sci department.
Let me stop my share.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well, welcome to all of you, and thank you for having me. I'm going to start by just making a request, and many of you, I understand, will have perfectly good reasons why your cameras have to be off, either because you're, whatever, you're taking care of the kids, or you have bandwidth issues, or your camera is physically challenged. And so please don't feel that I'm putting a scarlet letter around your neck or shaming you. But if you are able to turn your camera on and not otherwise, prevent it, please do. I just love lecturing or conversing with the human faces rather than gray screen. I feel that I get more feedback as a teacher. So it's just one of the things I miss most about the classroom. So I of course feel the same way as Amy does about her job here. I feel, this is probably not something the teacher union wants me to say. So those people who are administrators, keep it to yourself. But yeah, I figure out, when are they going to figure out that I would probably be doing this for free? They're literally paying me for stuff that I just love doing. And so I feel just as blessed as Amy does about that. Which is not to say that I wouldn't like to get paid more, but it's still an awesome situation to be in. So, as they say, find something you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. And I worked plenty of days in my life before I got this job. But and I also wanted to emphasize again with what Amy said about this sort of fake and hurtful and destructive polarization and partisanship that we're seeing. That is just not bad for our society, but it just makes us incapable of functioning. And while my perspective would be a little bit different from Amy's in terms of, I wouldn't, let's say, categorize it into four perspective or three perspective. My sort of ideological universe would have, maybe more four-dimensional, but I do want to talk about that a little bit, about where this sort of polarization comes from and maybe how to overcome it. But literally, our founders designed a political system that wasn't meant to work unless people mastered the art of compromise. It literally is going to lead to gridlock or hyperpluralism or whatever fancy word you want to use if people don't compromise. It literally was designed to only work if people are willing to compromise. It's in any case. And so we have this crazy notion in our country that there are only two legitimate perspectives, right? And we call them liberal or progressive, whatever term you want to use, or conservative. As some of you, especially if you've taken me before, I've been teaching here for 25 years. I teach political science, primarily American government, but also international relations and a few other courses, and some I teach occasionally, like political theory or comparative, but not on a regular basis now. But again, this notion that we're supposed to have two boxes has absolutely no foundation in any reality deeper than that we just happen to have stumbled onto a two-party system. So of course, our parties haven't stood for the same thing, for over history. And of course, Donald Trump, our current president, and our former Republican Senator, let's say Jeff Flake, and others. So there's a war going on in the Republican Party about whether it should be a populist party or a conservative party. And as I was just talking about with my students earlier today, the same war has been going on in the Democratic Party for decades, right? So it's usually the Clinton group representing one wing, and then whoever the progressive from Vermont is, whether it's Howard Dean or currently it's Bernie Sanders, or as Howard Dean said, he's running from the non-Clinton wing of the Democratic Party when he ran for president. I'm sorry, he said he was running from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. That was his way of saying not the non-Clinton family. So the idea is people fight over what should be in these boxes, but we have this artificially constricted set of boxes that is driven by our two-party system. Even though our founders hated political parties, and the progressives that started the Arizona political system and disagreed with the founders about a lot of stuff, agreed with them that parties were terrible things. But it turns out parties are here to stay, and they serve important functions in a political system. And we need to come to terms with it. But again, the idea that we have two parties here rather than 6 parties like in Germany, again, is based on nothing essential that anybody planned for. It's just called winner take all elections, right? So we have an electoral system that happens to be winner take all instead of proportional. And bingo, we lock ourselves into this two-party system. And so even words like right-wing and left-wing mean absolutely nothing to me other than where people were sitting in the room during the French Revolution, right? Whether they liked the king or hated the king. And that's nice to know what the seating arrangements were in late 18th century France, but why do we have to constrict ourselves to that in 2020, right? It's artificial. So we have, more and more people are sort of coming to terms with realizing this. So we have near record number of people being registered as independents. So they're sort of turning their backs on these parties and the party system, but it's still a two-party system. But even at the same time that near record numbers of people are registered as independents, record numbers of Americans are telling pollsters that they would be mad if their son or daughter or other gender identity child happened to marry one of their kind, meaning the other party, right? So what's up with that? Why are we so polarized? And Amy already sort of touched on that a little bit, which is, well, I'm going to expand on this a little bit. It's called the confirmation bias. This notion, that's the psychological term, that we tend to tune out information that conflicts with what we what we think to be true. And so we selectively ignore information it doesn't even process, that doesn't confirm what we already believe. And so we can debate all we want about whether some of our politicians or all of them sometimes or always are lying to us. And there's probably some of that going on. But some of them probably actually believe what they're saying, because confirmation bias can get so extreme that you actually believe stuff when you say it that isn't true, because you have sort of trained yourself to tune out information that conflicts with what you think is the case. And we are in the absolute worst time in human history that I'm aware of. I'm not obviously aware of all of human history, all places, but the internet is absolutely terrible at feeding this this confirmation bias, echo chambers, whatever you want to call it. I'm actually old enough, you can see that in my beard, that I remember a pre-internet age, right? But before the internet, we had at least, they were flawed, but we had certain shared sources of information. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Associated Press, Reuters, NBC, PBS. Sure, they weren't perfect, but they were sort of a shared version of reality. And maybe that was too constricted a version, and there were, groups like Project Censors out there talking about all the stories that are not getting covered. I get that. But again, at least we had some semblance of a shared reality. And today, that's gone. Even if it's not downright Russian bots or stuff making up fake stuff, or people being paid, these stories about being paid to post fake stuff on social media, real human beings to do it. Even short of all of that, look, let's face it, Americans have always been kind of conspiracy minded, right? We like our conspiracy stories. It's not just, 9/11 and Kennedy, it's also the anti-Masons and, and all of that stuff. But now, James Madison said, the nice thing about having a large, diverse country is that it makes it hard for one group of people to gang up on another group of people, because they don't even know those other people exist. They literally have no way of communicating with them. They're too far away. Well, newsflash, with social media today, you know, anybody can go online and find other people, you know, of their persuasion, and then talk themselves into a frenzy that can lead not just to disunity but to violence potentially. You can decide to get your quote unquote news with any shade of any kind of bias. You can get it with or without the black helicopters, so alien abductions, or left wing, right wing, or completely other spin. And it makes it harder to see our fellow human beings, not just to compromise and do this work that Amy is doing and that is important, but to even see them as human, or even from this planet. I mean, even to agree on any baseline on reality with them. And I don't see that really sort of lessening online. So the internet could be, is and can be a great tool for learning. We should be the most informed people ever in human history. We literally have no excuse not to be informed. We have more, if we have some basic ability to distinguish fake from real stuff and use critical thinking skills and so on, we really could and should be the most informed people. Yet, is that what we've been using the internet for? Or are we spending time watching cute videos of cats or dogs or other things? When I started teaching at Pima, according to reputable national surveys, 45 to 55% of Americans could name and describe the 3 branches of government. Today, the same exact surveys say it's 26%. It's literally been cut in half, and I'm not taking the blame for that. It happened on my watch. I'm not taking the blame. These are national surveys. So literally half as many people as used to before the internet can now identify the 3 branches of government. I mean, where's all of this going? And so that's one reason why I put those news organizations, the Associated Press and Reuters are my favorite. They're free. They didn't used to be free. You used to be able to, they used to only sell to newspapers, and the only way you could access their stuff is by buying a newspaper. Well, now it's free online. And wire services, as they used to be called, have literally, in the case of the Associated Press, for 170 years been in the fast, accurate, non-biased, non-fake, objective news reporting business, and they would have ceased to exist if they didn't do that, because the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or whoever bought their stuff would have stopped buying it if it wasn't reliable. So today, don't just Google stuff, go to a credible news organization and then go into the search box and search for information, because where you're getting the information is more important than ever. Because again, there is just no gatekeeper of any sense of reality or truth or anything out there on the internet if you just sort of randomly look up stuff. And it's a continuum. So it's not just all either or, it's on a continuum. So I do want to again emphasize the importance of voting. Amy already spoke to that, but I also want to be very clear. Because Sage sort of saddened me when she was, was like, okay, hopefully I haven't been failing my students. In Arizona, it is incredibly easy to get registered to vote. You can go to Service Arizona, or it's easy to do it. And then once you register, put it on autopilot, never give it another thought. Put yourself on the permanent early vote list. I haven't given any thought to it for a decade. Literally on autopilot. More than a month before an election, a ballot appears in my mailbox for primaries. A ballot appears for the general election. I never have to stand in line. I never have to worry when I vote and say, OMG, I'm supposed to vote on these judges and whether to retain them. I have no idea who they are, right? And Proposition 207 on marijuana or 208 on education funding, I guess I should have given that some thought. So can you get out of the voting booth and tell them to come back in an hour after you've done their research? They're going to look at you like you're a crazy person, right? But when it's sitting on your dining table, you have a whole month to research that thing. You literally could be the best informed voter ever. And then you send it back. Don't put a stamp on it. It's already paid for, right? And I mean, how easy is that? And if you're one of those super procrastinators that is responsible for us not knowing who won the election for 2 weeks afterwards, okay, spank yourself, but still drop it off on election day at any polling place in town, right? I mean, it's really, in Arizona, there's no excuse for not voting. And of course, in Arizona, election day is not election day, right? It's the day when the stragglers do their thing and catch up. I expect 80% of the people will have voted before election day. So it's election month, right? So and we are a purple state. We're one of 6 states that'll probably decide this presidential election. It's Florida, which is always purple. I mean, see, some states become purple as they go from being blue states to red states or red states to blue states. And purple is just a transition color, right? Florida has been purple forever, right? Florida literally decided the 2000 presidential election by 537 votes out of the millions cast in Florida and the over 100 million cast in the country. It came down to 537 votes in one state. And you're like, well, that's just a once in a lifetime thing. And I'm like, no, it's not. Martha McSally won her first race by 216 votes. And I was talking to my students earlier how in 2016, in the 5th congressional district in the Phoenix area, which is a deeply red district, whoever won that, the primary, was totally going to win the general election. They, out of 86,000 votes cast in that primary, somebody won it by a whopping 16 votes with under 30% of the vote because it was a 4-way race. And then they did a recount and it was a whopping 27 votes. We have had tied elections in Arizona where literally under the Arizona Constitution, a game of chance decides the winner. Like if it's tied, you flip a coin or draw straws. It literally, and it's actually happened. So the stuff about your vote doesn't matter. It does matter. Do vote. You know, don't be like afterwards, I could have been one of those 537 people, right? Arizona is a purple state. It is a deep purple state. I could give you lots and lots of data about looking at our executive branch, looking at our Senate, looking at the 5 Democrats in the U.S. House and the 4 Republicans. It doesn't get much more purple than Arizona is. The other states, by the way, are Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, and Wisconsin. I mean, you could argue over some of those, and I might put some others that was just from one place. There is a reason why you can't watch anything on your device anymore without being bombarded by Trump and Biden ads. Maybe you're only getting it from one side. Maybe it's my ecumenical reading habits that I get them 50-50. But in Florida, the parties, the candidates have already committed $319 million worth of advertising. Mike Bloomberg decided that wasn't enough and just tossed in another $100 million just for Florida, in his case, of course, strictly to beat Trump and boost Biden. So I don't know that you're necessarily looking forward to it, but if Arizona ends up being stuck in purple land for a while, we should be getting used to, 100, 200 million being dropped in our presidential races. As it is, we currently have the most expensive Senate race in the country. It may not stay that way, but we're talking $100 million for the Kelly McSally race. 75 of that from the candidates. Kelly has outraised McSally by about 15 million, but so far 25 million from outside groups. That could easily go to 150 million. Again, we are a very purple state, and we're going it's not only that we're purple, we're getting more important in the Electoral College and in the House, because we're doing a census now, which, and if enough of you fill out your forms, should net us another representative. So for 2022, we should have 10 representatives, and then for 2024, 12, rather than 11 electoral votes. So we're both growing in political clout and in purpleness, and again, that it makes it very, very important. Interest.
Thank you, Mr. Stafir.
Yeah. So
we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So we're going to take this time now, if I can just interject. So we're going to take this time now to transition into the organizations that we're partnering with. We appreciate your presentation. If any questions that we have that we've collected so far that are directed at you or Dr. Kramer will be doing the Q&A at the end. So make sure to stick around. It looks like a couple of people had a few questions for you. Very enlightening stuff. The first organization that will be presenting, just doing a very brief presentation on their mission, is going to be Jennifer Manning with studentvote.org.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Manning, and I'm a campus organizer with Arizona PIRG Students. We're a statewide nonprofit organization working to increase youth voting and civic engagement on college campuses. And for well over a decade now, we've been working with students and administrators on college campuses all across the nation to make the youth vote a priority. And young people are the largest and most diverse set of potential voters in the country right now. So that's why this fall, we're working to register students through peer-to-peer voter registration and mobilization here in Arizona. And although our organizing looks different due to COVID, that doesn't mean we can't make an immediate impact in our community, kind of what everybody's been talking about. So that's why we're working this fall on our New Voters Project. And since 2004, we've been able to register 2 million young people to vote, as well as make 2.2 million personal get out the vote contact reminders on election day to get students out to the polls. And this upcoming Tuesday, we're actually working to reach as many students as possible on National Voter Registration Day. We want to create broad awareness and take really strong grassroots action so that tens of thousands of Americans who might not otherwise register to vote actually do get registered before the deadline in October. And our tool, studentvote.org, is a website made in collaboration with Rock the Vote over a decade ago. And it's made for students, by students. It's easy to use, free, and you're able to register anywhere in the country. So if you haven't registered to vote, I'm gonna send a link in the chat in just a second, and you can get started on that. It's only like a 2-minute form. And also, if anybody wants to get involved in our National Voter Registration Day work this upcoming Tuesday, I'm also going to drop a form in the chat that you can fill out and attend all of our virtual National Voter Registration Day events to help get students in Arizona registered to vote. But that's Arizona PIRG. I'm going to drop those links in the chat right now, as well as my email if anybody wants to get involved or has any other personal questions about registering to vote. But thank you for allowing me to speak today. It's awesome.
Thank you, Jennifer. We really appreciate it. We've had a few comments in the chat with issues copying, pasting links, and only being able to post hyperlinks. So everybody, if you cannot save the chat, stay tuned in the Q&A. Senator Sage is going to be presenting a handout that'll have the links as well. So thank you, Jennifer. Next up, we have Noreen Geyer-Kordowski with the League of Women Voters, Greater Tucson. Noreen?
Hello. Can you hear me now?
There you are.
Oh, okay. I think I unmuted because I didn't want to interfere. I'll make this quick. Jennifer, that was great. I love hearing that. Student to student registering and student to student education is just what we really think is the most successful. The slides that you're going to see real quickly are part of an effort I did in 2018 and 19 in high schools. And it was to get students ready to register to vote. And so it's very simplistic, but it's a big role of the League of Women Voters that we want to empower and educate citizens to improve government and to actively participate in their government. That's what democracy is. We're nonpartisan, and everybody that's listening today can join the League. It says League of Women Voters. We have a lot of men that join. It looks great on a student resume that you're a member of the League of Women Voters. So you can go to League of Women Voters website and join. And if you don't have any money right now, you can join for free. Anyway, let's go real quick. I took that first one was, making sure that people realize that they need to make the changes. I would often ask students, are some people's opinions more important to yours? And you can imagine than yours, you can imagine that in a high school, I would get quite a few reactions that no, that was not true, that their opinions was opinions were just as important as anybody else's. Next slide. So what I said would tell them is those, of course, who actually vote decide what's best for you. So do you want that? Do you want those you love, maybe your nana, your mother, your sisters and brothers, whatever, do you want them making your decisions, or do you want to make your own decisions? So we talk about that. You have to vote if you want to do that. All right, next slide. This we don't need to go over, but I would give a little bit of civic instruction when I would go in, you know, about who do we elect next, and who else do we elect, and what issues would get you to vote. What? And so this slide I would usually keep on for a little bit to see if students can tell me some things they were interested in. What would get you to actually go out and vote? Next slide. And as they mentioned things, I had some things too. How about? And we talk about these. Now I want to mention just real quickly, I'm saying that I would do this, but actually in a lot of the high schools I went into, I worked with a group of maybe 4 to 6 students who actually took this PowerPoint around to their classrooms and they did it. So they got students involved by using the PowerPoint. And occasionally I would do it, but most of the time I tried to get students to do it. So these were some of the areas. Next. Register to vote. Your vote is your voice. And one of the things I mentioned that I don't think is on this slide, but I had in my other ones, I would ask students, my other PowerPoints, I'd ask them, who is more likely to vote? And I'd get a wide variety of answers. Some people would say, oh, young people. And some people would say, old people. And I would tell them, okay, and we would do a little exercise, which I'm not going to do now, but a little exercise to demonstrate that actually 60 to 80-year-olds had the greatest number of voting in 2016. So, and the younger new voters, less so. Lower numbers, but we know that's increasing with activism among the young, but your voice counts. So when you are working, there's not going to be all the Pima students on today. As you're talking to your fellow students, ask them things that are important. What's important to you? And what do you want to see changed? And this is the way you can start that change. Next slide. So then I would give a little information about how to vote. And I agree with the earlier speaker who talked about getting on the early voting, so you are on that permanent list. The only thing I would change about that is be sure and let them know when you move or you change your name, because you don't want to mess that all up, because then it'll not get to you. The other thing that's not here, I think it's on the next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So then I would tell them it's quick and easy. It's really easy to register to vote. And when I would go into classrooms, every time a student would register to vote, we'd do a big handshake and congratulations, which we can't do with COVID right now. But what it says at the bottom, and I can't stress this enough, it's very important that you sign your registration with your regular signature. It's not the time to be Michelangelo and to do a great script signature, because you've heard about signature matching. It's important that you do kind of how you signed your driver's license, do a regular signature, nothing different. Next slide. This is from our website. So you can go on the League of Women Voters website. We do, now they're online, we do a lot of voter education meetings, talks, and some of them when COVID was not around, we did out in the community. Everything from climate change to letting you meet some of the people who are running. So here are some nonpartisan websites, and the League is nonpartisan. So you want to be sure and look at what websites that are going to give you good information, a variety of them possibly. so that you can go to the polls and really understand what you're voting for. The other thing I just want to add real quick, and I'm sure my time is about out, is that you really, when people are, when you're going to vote, you want to know that you don't necessarily have to vote for everything. Now, some people didn't like it when I would say that in schools, but students are used to trying to fill everything out. You want to become an educated voter, but don't stay away from the polls because you do not know something about the judges, as one of the speakers mentioned, or a proposition. If you go and just vote for a governor or a president, do that, because that will start you as becoming a lifelong voter, and that's what we want. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Noreen. We appreciate that. And those are the that right there is the exact reason why we tried to put this event together, was to get people to vote smart and understand the issues so they know what to vote on. So we really appreciate that.
Great.
Last but not least is Hannah Irwin with When We All Vote. I believe Hannah is going to also be presenting briefly with Clinton Ponder Gilby, who is part of our very own Pima Honors Club. So take it away, guys.
Thank you, Noreen, for speaking. I realized that what you do is kind of similar to what I'm doing with my school votes. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Hannah. I'm a freshman here at Pima this year. I joined Pima's Honors Club, and now I work with When We All Vote, and specifically my school votes, where we are basically trying to get young people, high schoolers in particular, to vote. When We All Vote is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that is on a mission to increase participation in every election and close the race and age voting gap by changing the culture around voting, harnessing grassroots energy, and through strategic partnerships to reach every American. Launched in 2018 by co-chairs Michelle Obama, Tom Hanks, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Janelle Monáe, Chris Paul, Faith Hill, and Tim McGraw, When We All Vote is changing the culture around voting using a data-driven and multifaceted approach to increase participation in elections. In the months directly before the 2018 midterm elections, When We All Vote organized 2,500 local voter registration events across the country, engaged 200 million Americans online about the significance of voting, and texted nearly 4 million voters the resources to register and get out to vote. I've been working with my school votes for a few weeks now, and I've been going into the senior classes at my old high school that I just graduated from and presenting in their virtual classrooms. Last Friday, I presented in 3 periods of my old AP English literature class, and this Friday I will be presenting in 3 more senior English classes. I basically go over why and how students can register to vote, and also how they can register to become poll workers. In 2016, Arizona voter turnout was low, especially among Hispanic and Native American voters. Almost 21% of communities of color voted, and over 1 million are unregistered. When We All Vote is working to help raise the amount voted and register and help fight voter suppression amongst Black, Indigenous, and people of color voters. Since the country is facing a poll worker shortage, we are not only encouraging students to vote, but also to become poll workers. Older people usually serve as poll workers, but are understandably hesitant to do so this year because they're worried about getting sick. The voter registration deadline is October 5th, so if you're not already registered to vote, you can do so at the link that I will put in the chat. It takes 5 minutes tops, and you can do it online. And if you're available to be a poll worker, you can sign up with the link that I will post in the chat as well. If you would like to speak in virtual high school classrooms with my school votes, you can click on the last link that I will put in the chat, or you can email me. Thank you for listening, and now I'm going to hand it off to Sage.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hannah, for coming, and thanks for all your work with your community. I think that's really important, especially as a youth group. I am going to present some local resources. We put a page together for you all. I would also like to say there are tons of local resources, but also here at Pima Community College, you have a lot of support. For example, you know, Professor Safir was my political science professor last semester. He helped me I talked with him about my Senate campaign and how I wanted to run, and his class just really stuck with me, and all the professors here at Pima are more than willing to help you out if you have any questions. So let me go ahead and share. Here is our voter education resources. So we have studentvote.org, When We All Vote, Campus Vote Project, League of Women's Voters. There's so many awesome, organizations, and, a lot of them just presented for us today. Finally, here are some state and national resources: the AZ Clean Elections, the ACE Project, the Arizona Center for Empowerment, and then the Arizona Coalition for Change. Now, all of these organizations aim to give you more information. I was even looking AZ Clean Elections. If you want to run for office, they have a tab there, which I think is also an important part of being a citizen as well. And everyone can also run. Anyways, I would now like to transition to, let me stop and share. Transition now to our Q&A session. It looks like we got a couple of great questions. Josh, I'm going to hand it off to you if you want to start with the first one.
Real quick,
Awesome.
before we start with the first question, for whoever answers, we're going to time them about a 2-minute response. So I'll be timing you all.
Thank you, Bea. Thank you, Sage. So first question, looks like we got in the chat from Yuri Orius to Mr. Safir. Do you foresee a changing trend in this two-party system, or do you see it continuing?
It's an excellent question. I foresee that because it's structural, I don't see it likely to change. I do think there are some very interesting ideas out there that might be plausible and that might have a chance of changing it, such as ranked choice voting. Check out the state of Maine and ranked choice voting, or instant runoff, which is basically a way that the French have this institutionalized, but basically you can vote your heart's content. So you can vote Green or Libertarian or however else, if your heart is with a third party, but then not to worry about quote unquote wasting your vote, because you can have sort of, if you consider, and I'm not saying that I do, but if you consider the big parties the lesser of two evils, you can mark one of them down as your backup option. And when it turns out that your first option didn't work out, they will then go to your second vote, basically. And so ranked choice voting is an interesting concept. It is possible, it would be possible to do a proportional representation system in a state if there is a billionaire with nothing better to do with their money and enough political charisma to pay for a ballot initiative. First of all, only half the states allow the people or well-funded special interests or billionaires to put stuff on the ballot. So in half the states, the initiative isn't really an option effectively, but in states like Arizona and Oregon and Washington and California and so on, that could certainly be done if that basically we end up with a proportional representation system that could be done at the state level. It's not written in stone. It's just highly unlikely. And if we have a system of proportional representation, I don't mean to oversell that. We could be substituting one set of problems with a different set of problems, and we might make compromising even harder than it currently is. So I was just trying to explain how we got to where we are.
Perfect. You actually did perfect on time. You went like 2 seconds over, which is all that we can ask for. I believe Sage Fukaimokola has our second question for us.
Oh, it looks like our second question is from Josh Duran to Mr. Safir. How do we find or read ballot measures?
Okay, well, one place to find it is to check your mailbox, because guess what I got in the mail? Every household gets one of these. It's a, how many pages is it? 178-page document. Honestly, I understand it's well-intentioned. Honestly, I think it's about 170 pages too long. If I had to design it, I would cut out 170 pages because really the problem is you go through about 50 or 60 pages on how all these judges get 100% or 98% ratings from the Judicial Performance Review Commission. And frankly, nobody reads that anyway. And it's also well-intentioned, but useless, because if the Judicial Review Commission ever says that any of these judges really are horrible and should be defeated, it just means they win with 80% of the vote instead of 100% of the vote. So it's a well-intentioned effort that is kind of useless. However, in this booklet, you have full ballot propositions printed, and they're written in legalese that you probably can make sense of. And honestly, I can only limited make sense of. The best place to find information is to look at the Legislative Council Analysis, which is in here. It's the short version of the ballot proposition that tells you in plain English what it actually does. By law, it has to be fair and objective. And if it's not, people will sue over it to have the language corrected. It's the best place to get the skinny on what these propositions actually do. And yes, there are pro and con things, and you can find interesting stuff like our Democratic attorney is against legal marijuana, and our conservative former Republican governor is for it. Interesting stuff, but usually the pro and con arguments are useless because there is no quality control, and you can put any nonsense on paper and they will have to print it, typos and all.
Wow.
Thank you, Mr. Safir. Very good stuff.
I think I was out of time. I could have certainly kept talking. So
Perfect. You're great. The next question we have is from Julia to Mr. Safir and Dr. Kramer. We'll start with Dr. Kramer. How much do you feel lobbying affects our political system? In what way? What are some of the negatives and positives?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. I think you went out for a second.
No problem. So the question was, how much do you feel that lobbying affects our political system, and in what way? What are the negatives and positives?
Well, actually, I think that lobbying, the role of lobbying depends on the perspective. Different perspectives see it differently. The radicals are going to look at it differently from the conservatives and the liberals. But I think that everybody agrees that corruption that any sort of corruption of our elected officials is problematic. But lobbying in its pure form, when it isn't in a corrupting way, I think it depends on the perspective and the way that it's used. So it's really can't be a one size fits all answer for that.
I would also give sort of I would hedge my answer a little bit. Some of what you might consider lobbying, of course, is absolutely essential speech under the First Amendment, right? You have a right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And in our pluralistic system, you do this to be effective. You often have to do it in an organized way, not just random individuals. And I think lobbying is probably less corrupting of the system than it's often assumed to be, simply because most lobbyists, most special interest money goes to people that you agree with to begin with. It's not like the pro-life lobby goes to Nancy Pelosi's office and says, how much money do we have to give you to flip to being pro-life, right? So mostly it's sort of reinforcing. Yeah, there is of course in a way that it buys privileged access for certain interests, and I was a little bit disheartened that the former House literally read this yesterday. The former House Foreign Relations Chairman, I think his name is Ed Royce, he just signed up for being a lobbyist for, oh my God, I think it was. It may have been China. Anyway, he signed up for, he used to be really into human rights in Tibet and Xinjiang and other things. And he literally just signed up as a lobbyist for a country that is very much in the repression business. And I remember a former chancellor of Germany, Gerhard Schröder, ever since he stopped being the German chancellor, like way more powerful than a president is, He joined the Russian energy company Rosneft. He literally sits on their board, and he's also on the board of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So to say that he's sold out is, I think, an understatement. And so it's on a continuum, like Amy said, or it depends on the perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Saphir.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. This is for Dr. Amy Kramer. And then Josh asked, how do we communicate issues with state and federal representatives?
How do we communicate issues with state and federal representatives? Oh, okay. So here's what I mean. In terms of the practicality of all that, let's leave that to Eric. But I'm very, very happy that Eric's my colleague, because I can often just throw things over to him. But here's the thing. I think what needs to happen is that we need to have a series for legislators that are required when they take office on the different perspectives on the issues. And so right now what we have with the VOTE program is we have the class, but we also have a teacher training series where I train people from around the country about bringing different perspectives in a respectful way into their classrooms. But what our plan is to actually create a legislative series. And before, when a person becomes a legislator, they should be required to not just to come in as with their own perspective and just push that like a free-for-all, but instead the VOTE program is where people actually have to try on the voices and actually act out the roles of the different perspectives. I think that that's going to be a very important way to maybe just compromise, as Eric was saying before, but for me, the end game is not just compromise, although if that's good, but actually helping us to be more creative in our thinking because we're respectful about different perspectives.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Kramer. The next question that we have is from Stage H to Dr. Kramer. Are there any documentaries or podcasts that you would recommend for individuals who want to learn more about voting?
So here's the thing. So what we do is kind of start the conversation in the VOTE program. So it's just a very basic, here's what the different perspectives are saying. And of course, there's a lot of complexity and a lot of debate within each perspective, as you get farther along. So most of the documentaries and most of the stuff that you're going to do is already sort of committed to one way of thinking about things. There's very little, in fact, I can't think about anything right now that is kind of a documentary on, okay, here are the different perspectives on that. Of course, I'm hoping that we're going to do a documentary that would be just the thing for you, but that's going to come after, the second part of the textbook, and then there's the online class, and then the documentary, and then the general interest book, and then the Broadway musical. So there's lots of things that we're going to do, but I just have to let you know right now that what we're doing is really going against the grain, not just in economics, education in general, but in our nation in general. This idea that actually a pathway forward is to be respectful, but still a passionate advocate of different perspectives. And that's not out there. I think that that's part of why our work has been so successful, is it's really fitting a niche that is kind of empty right now.
Thanks so much, Dr. Amy Kramer.
Dr. Amy Kramer. Just call me Amy, please.
Okay. So our next question is from Bea to Professor Saphir. Do you think regulations, fees, monitoring of information will help the disinformation?
Okay, could I ask to clarify that a little bit more? Regulation and monitoring of what by whom?
Regulation of, I can fill in a little bit. I was talking a little bit about regulation around what you were talking about, the misinformation on the internet and the vast amount of deregulation that there is. Do you think that if we were to regulate and tax different groups, if they put out misinformation if that would help with the trend that we're seeing on the internet?
No, not really. I mean, I'm going to remain agnostic about the impact of, what Facebook and Twitter and all these social media companies are trying to do. They're trying to separate the wheat from the chaff and, get rid of the bots and tag completely fake videos and things like that, right? But I'm skeptical that that's ultimately going to have much of an impact. A lot of that is kind of baked in with the First Amendment that, in Europe, there are 9 countries where if you engage in any form of Holocaust denial, you can get a multi-year prison sentence for that. In the United States, hopefully we will just sort of ostracize you and shame you and consider you kind of a numbskull for denying something fairly obvious and extremely well documented and so on. But I believe that a lot of that is sort of the intersection of the First Amendment and the nature of social media. Even when these efforts are made by companies like Twitter and Facebook and whatever, they're sometimes ham-handed, and it's just such a volume of information, and there's always human judgment involved, and what is tagged and what is deleted. So, for example, should the I'm not going to say the word, but there's a group called NWA that has a song called F the Police, and Donald Trump recently retweeted a video that appears to, in a fake way, show Joe Biden dancing to that music, right? It was obviously fake, but potentially Trump could claim that that was satire. That would be such an outrageous and ridiculous thing to do that, it might constitute satire. And, I remember when The Onion was the big deal, how people would sometimes think The Onion was real. Like people would literally send stories from The Onion and not knowing it was a satirical magazine. So the point is, there's so much perspective and judgment involved that I think not too optimistic that we can make all this, Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. Very enlightening, Mr. Safir. The next question that we have looks like it's from Sage H to either Dr. Kramer or Mr. Safir. We'll go with Dr. Kramer on this one. You mentioned the Electoral College several times. Would you mind giving us a brief rundown about the history of the Electoral College?
So I didn't mention the Electoral College, but thank you for thinking that I did, because that means you got me confused with what Eric is saying, and Eric's brilliant. So thank you for thinking that I thought that. But in any case, it's Eric. So let me just switch that over to him.
No problem.
Okay, so the brief rundown of the Electoral College, of course, was it was designed to forego that to prevent something that our founders thought would be terrible, which is people running for president. They thought that would bring out the worst factionalism and polarization, and it might lead us to turn one camp against the other, and it would lead to candidates making ridiculously unreasonable promises and appeal to to our worst fears and prejudices while they're peddling unreasonable hopes as well, and so on. So basically, they said, we're not going to have that in our republic. We're going to have some brilliant, erudite people chosen by the state legislatures to have a drafting contest for who our national hero is. And let's draft George Washington, right? So basically, you weren't supposed to run. They were supposed to be drafted because you're so brilliant and amazing. And that worked exactly twice. George Washington once or twice. And by 1800, the parties had formed, and the thing was never what it was intended to be. The parties took over the process, and they just became, party selection processes. And then, of course, it was turned over to the people, where the people choose these electors. So technically, all kinds of weird things could happen with the Electoral College. So it's unlikely, but not inconceivable, that you could have, let's say, a very close and controversial election where it appears that whoever won the popular vote, it appears that candidate A won the Electoral College, but then some state legislature decides to diss their voters and tries to choose different electors after the fact, and then that would be litigated in court. So I hope we don't see those kinds of things, but all kinds of weird stuff could happen. But the Supreme Court did recently rule that electors can be forced to vote a certain way. Because there, I don't know if you know this, there were about 10 faithless electors, I think 2 of whom ultimately didn't get to do their thing, but there were 2 Trump electors that didn't vote for Trump and 5 Hillary electors that didn't vote for Hillary Clinton, and so on. And the court said, no, you can force people to vote a certain way. But all that means is, I guess you can punish them or you can replace them if they disclose their deed in advance. I still don't know if you could do anything once they have cast their electoral votes.
Thank you, Mr. Safir. We're over time.
Yep.
You did really good at the other ones, but this one you went a little bit over.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm just teasing you.
Okay, so we have our last and final question for Amy. So this is from Josh D. How do you identify and try and fight voter suppression?
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I really appreciate being a part of this voting registration and voting education project because of my very particular bent, and which involves voting, education about the economic issues that affect our lives so much. However, I am not a person that has a position or an opinion about, I mean, I have my personal opinion, but nothing professional opinion about what's going on with voter suppression. So here again, I will hand that over to my very talented and wonderful colleague, Eric.
So voter suppression is certainly real, but again, it's on a continuum of doing things that are justifiable in some sort of way, but in the aggregate would tend to lead to less voter turnout from somebody else. So not every form of voter suppression is the same thing as so-called literacy tests or poll taxes or whatever. Again, think of it as a continuum, and think of it as something that starts with something legitimate, which is what the progressives did, for example. They were upset that some counties would have 200 or 300% voter turnout. Even in 1960, as recently as 1960s, there are counties in Texas where more people voted than lived there. And nobody wants to see that. Nobody believes in voting early and often. And so it starts with a legitimate concern that you don't want to have fraud, obviously. And so that's why we are one of the few places in the world that requires you to register to vote to begin with, which itself is a form of voter suppression. North Dakota, by the way, doesn't make you register. It's the only state that doesn't. But again, it's in light of history, it's understandable that people would want to be registered. And then on how do you know? So committing voter fraud would be ridiculously easy if you wanted to, but increasingly you might get caught doing it. The real debate that I see is there is very little evidence that any of it is occurring, even though it would be easy to do. And so again, there are anecdotal stories. There's one out of New Jersey where somebody just fessed up to a lot of that and so on. So again, it would be easy to do, but our ballot ID measures and things like that, are those fake solutions to a barely existing problem today that in the aggregate will lead to voter suppression? That is a very legitimate debate. So again, I wouldn't take necessarily completely one side in this debate, but it is absolutely not coincidental that Republicans and Democrats both advocate for things where their principles follow their interests and where what they advocate for or against happens to line up with what would also happen to their political bottom line. It does on both sides.
Thank you, Mr. Safir.
Thank you.
You did really good on time with that one. And I believe, Sage, you said that was the last question that we had? Yeah, sweet. So we're a little bit over, but I just wanted to thank everyone again for participating. We did record this meeting, so the recording will be made available on the Student Life YouTube page, probably tomorrow once I get the video edited. We will also send out the information from the resource page, And always keep in touch with Student Life via our social media pages. We have a Facebook page, we have a Instagram page, and we also have a specific email if you ever want to contact your senators. Let me pull up that email so I can just throw it into our chat. The email is pcc-student-senators. I'm trying to copy paste this. And so this email goes to all of your student senate representatives. If you ever have concerns as a student that you want to bring up, issues that you're experiencing at Pima, suggestions for any sort of event or things that you are interested in, that would be a great place to do so. And to keep in touch with us at Student Life, keep in touch with Student Senate and all of our clubs, please check out our Discord. That is an invitation that I threw in the chat. Check it out, get connected with other students, and stay involved. So once again, thank you so much to Mr. Safir and Dr. Kramer for participating into all of the different resources that also attended today. I'm really, really happy and really thankful that we were able to make this happen. And it wouldn't have been possible without the brilliance and the impetus from our amazing senators. So I'm really, really excited to be working with this group, and I'm really thankful for their desire to work on civic engagement. Good afternoon or evening. Yeah, it's evening. Have a good evening, get some food, and have a good Friday tomorrow. Thank you all so much.